Welcome back, everybody. I hope that you all enjoyed your breakout sessions and learned a tremendous amount. Today has been our day of learning about innovations. For our final session today, we are talking about innovations in Hollywood. Our theme, as you all know, this year is moving towards change. Hollywood is changing. The way we portray people with disabilities is changing for the better, and we're super excited about it. Here with us today to talk about how Hollywood is changing, what is being done, and what you should be paying attention to is an amazing team of women who are really at the forefront of making this happen. I would like to first bring forward Lauren Applebaum. Lauren?
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure, Lauren. Thank you for joining us here today. Folks, Lauren has been a close colleague of mine for about 8 or 9 years now. Lauren is the Vice President for Disability Inclusion and Accessibility Consultant. She is with a group called Respectability, which some of you may know of. Respectability is a national disability organization that is really working on fighting stigmas by promoting diverse, authentic, and accurate portrayals of people with disabilities in so many venues, including in Hollywood. Respectability also is about advancing opportunities by identifying and promoting best practices in education, employment, civic engagement, and access, and building leadership development opportunities to strengthen a talent pipeline of people with disabilities. What Lauren's going to talk about today, she's got a panel of folks she has brought on with her who are really going to talk about how we're building that pipeline in Hollywood, how we are changing from a time in which people with disabilities were portrayed primarily by people without disabilities, and maybe weren't very accurate in their portrayals. So, what we're going to talk about today is how we're changing that, and not just about those who are actors in Hollywood, but people behind the scenes as well, producers, writers, every aspect of the Hollywood workforce we are making change in. So, Lauren, I'm so excited that you could be with us today to talk about this. I got a little sneak peek about a week ago. I serve on the board of directors for Respectability, and I was out in LA with Respectability for a board meeting. Got a little chance to learn a little bit about what Lauren and the team are doing in changing Hollywood and to meet some of the folks through her lab that are really making this happen. So now everybody gets to learn what I got to learn last week. So, Lauren, thank you. I'll turn it over to you now so you can introduce your colleagues, and we can't wait to hear what you all have to share with us. Thanks.
Thanks, Donna. It's a pleasure joining you. So many invites have come in over the past few weeks, and when I saw Robin's invite, I knew that it was with your organization. So, of course, was going to say yes. So, thank you for having us. As Donna mentioned, my name is Lauren Applebaum. I use the pronouns she and her. I like to visually describe myself for anyone who might not be able to see me. I am a white woman wearing brown hair and glasses, a navy blue shirt with a green wall and a brown file folder behind me. I've been at Respectability for about 6.5 years now, and I know that because I accepted the job offer, and my daughter decided to come in a very theatrical way that same night. And so I'm able to she came a little early, but all good. And so it's been wonderful because she's been able to grow up in an environment of being around people that don't look exactly like her, which is going to really make a huge difference her entire life. As Donna mentioned, our goal at Respectability is to increase employment opportunities for disabled people in every single sector. My personal background is in television news. I was in broadcast journalism and political news. And when I started at Respectability, we started doing some work in that area, and I've done trainings for journalists. And then about 5 years ago, started moving into entertainment media because what we see on our screens influence how we act in real life. And it's important for both the news and entertainment media to be reflecting this authentically. I personally began this work as an ally. I acquired my disability in March 2018, something called reflex sympathetic dystrophy. It affects the nervous system for me in my right arm and right leg, and had to kind of relearn how to do some things for me that have been pretty basic before, like pushing my daughter in her stroller or pushing a shopping cart. And I always like talking about this because it's important to, I know everyone in this audience, we're all connected to disability, but sometimes we're talking to folks where they may not have a connection to disability quite yet, but the longer we live, the higher chance that we will have some sort of connection, whether it's personal, ourselves, or a family member or a close friend. And I also like sharing this because whether you're born with a disability or acquire one later on, you have to be innovative. That's just part of our DNA. We have to come up with new ways to do things, which make us really great people to work in the entertainment media. Now I'm going to share some stats. I was asked to kind of set this stage before I bring on 3 panelists. According to the CDC, 1 in 4 adults in America has a disability, a total of 61 million people in the US, and that includes both visible disabilities and non-visible disabilities. So we're talking about 25% if with adults. When you include children, that's 20%. Just 3.5% of series regular characters on TV have a disability, and that's for this 2020 to 2021 season. That's up slightly from 3.1% the year before. These stats are according to GLAAD. In film, we have the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, which began tracking disability in feature films back in 2015. And in 2019, they found that 2.3% of all speaking characters across the 100 top grossing films of 2019 included a disability. That number is the same exact number that we found in 2015. So unfortunately, no growth from 2015 to 2019. In addition, just 4 of the 19 leading characters in these films that had a disability were from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group, and just 1 from the LGBTQ+ community. And nearly all on-screen portrayals of disabled individuals in media are white, despite the fact that disability impacts all of us. In children's content, less than 1% of leading characters have a disability, and that's according to the Gina Davis Institute on Gender and Media. So less than 1% of leading characters have a disability in children's content, where it's so important in the work that we do. In children and family films, the amount of representation is better. We're up to 8%, and that was both last year and the year before. We're both at 8%, but these characters are much more likely to either be rescued or die. And yes, we're talking about content that is geared to children, showing disabled characters dying. In a recent study that just came out last week, conducted jointly by Respectability and Nielsen, we found that the volume of media content inclusive of disability has increased by more than 175% in the past decade when compared with the previous 10 years. Now, 175%, that sounds like a really, really great number, and something that we can celebrate. But when we look at the raw numbers, it's something like 150 to 30. So yes, there's been growth, but the amount, if we go back to the stat from before, just 2.3% in film, 3.5% in TV is still so low when we compare to the actual number of those of us who are disabled here. And then the Nielsen study also found of where we're seeing disability representation. 65% are in feature films and just 16% in television series. And why is this important? Repetition is important. There have been studies out there saying that you need to hear something at least 7 times in order to fully internalize something. And so when you see a disabled character in film, you might just watch that film once. But if you have a disabled character in a television series who's in every single episode, you're going to see them 6, 8, 12, 20 times over the season. And so while we at Respectability work in all types of media, our focus primarily is on television because of that importance of the repetition that we're going to see. And we also have a very strong focus on children's and family content, because we know that we can make a huge difference there. As being a mom of a 6-year-old, I know that what she sees on TV is going to influence how she acts when she sometimes gets a hold of YouTube and sees content that's a little bit older for her. I'll notice that she might talk back to me with an attitude, and where did she learn that? She learned that from watching a character on screen. And so thinking about, really impacting children's and family films where parents may be watching content with their kids as well is really, really important. Now I'd love to bring our panelists on. We set the stage, and now I'm going to bring Emily on first. Emily Kranking is an actress and writer with cerebral palsy. Her first feature film, Best Summer Ever, in which she stars as the bubbly cheerleader Nancy, was released in April 2021 and is now available for everyone to watch on Hulu. Last year, she was a participant in Respectability's Hollywood Lab program, as well as for the year before, worked with us as a fellow on both employment and policy issues, as well as Hollywood and communications work.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Emily. I wish we could be in person for this, but it's so nice to see you.
I know. I miss all of you at Respectability. How's everyone doing there?
We're doing well. As Donna mentioned, we recently were in LA last week for our board and staff retreat. And so it was nice to see people in person, including new staff members that I had hired during the pandemic, but had only ever talked to on Zoom and via phone.
Right.
So now we're going to bring Ashley on, and I had the chance to actually see Ashley in LA last week, which was really very nice. Ashley Eakin is a writer and director based out of LA. Last year, she was one of 8 women selected for the AFI Directing Workshop for Women, and her project Single was selected for the 2020 South by Southwest Film Festival and received the Special Jury Recognition Award. In 2020, she was hired as a staff writer on an animated Netflix series that will be coming out in due time. It is animated, so it takes a while, featuring a character with a disability.
Hello.
Sorry.
Just saying hello.
Lastly, I'd like to bring on Juliet Romeo. She is an award-winning filmmaker now living in South Florida. Diagnosed with sickle cell disease as a newborn, she recently completed her second documentary for PBS called Art of Warriors, highlighting the impact that COVID-19 had on the sickle cell community. Noticing the need for more accessibility in mainstream film festivals, Juliet founded the Unstoppable Films program, promoting disability and diversity inclusion in film. This program made its debut for Slamdance Film Festival 2021 with record-breaking numbers. Welcome.
Hi. I know everyone on this panel. It's so good to see everyone and be here today. Thanks.
So everyone here kind of represents different aspects of the entertainment industry. Some of you overlap a bit, but it's nice to be able to hear from different disciplines within the industry. Emily, let's start with you. What inspired you to get involved in the entertainment industry?
Yeah, so I started acting when I was in middle school. And then really started thinking about really being an actress until high school. And then in college, I wanted to be a writer, so I majored in communications and went into creative writing. And I wrote a couple of nice things, and including like some pilots, and I've done developmental work on TV, and I've done like script competitions in movies. And my goal is, I would love to be an actress and working in movies, I also would love to write for animation and comedies. And I've always been interested in the entertainment industry since I was a kid. I always watched shows and movies. And I always know since I was a kid, a part of me knew that I was always meant to be with the entertainment industry somehow. And visibility has helped me a lot with my writing career. And there's like no disabled officers who were on TV. So I gave up and the summer ever came again and gave me like chances I never forget. Like I'm in the conservatory. I am filming my second movie on Saturday in Baltimore, and a lot is happening with my acting. So I'm very very happy. I can't wait to focus more on my writing as well.
Excellent. And yes, I know when you were a fellow with us, you helped us with a lot of the script consulting work that we do. You were one of the first to kind of be on our team to do that work 3 or 4 years ago now. So thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Ashley, you've pivoted between writing and directing. And I think it's fair to say that when you become good in one, it kind of helps you in the other as well. Can you talk us a bit through your career path and goals?
Yeah, I originally, when I went to college in San Diego, I was studying journalism. Writing was kind of a big passion there. And I think a lot of it too was, I was born with a physical disability. It's a rare bone disease. And so it's very visible. And I think writing was a way to be in the workforce and be behind the scenes and not have to show myself as much. And I've always been a very visual person. And I think I've always wanted to direct, even since high school. I just pushed those passions aside because I was so nervous about what it would be like to be a person with a disability on a set. Would people listen to me? The director's in charge of everyone. So I pushed that away and just started working in the industry. I was an assistant for a lot of different people. I worked in different production companies. And about 5 years in, I was like, you know what, this directing thing is not going away. I really want to do it. And so I directed a short that I wrote, and I really loved the process. And I was like, I almost think I like directing more than writing. And it'd be great to collaborate with writers who really love that process. And I stepped away from writing and collaborated with someone for my second short. And at the same time, I kind of realized I need to work for a director to know what this job actually is with people working in Hollywood. And so I got a job assisting the director, John Chu, who directed Crazy Rich Asians. And that was a really amazing experience. I worked for him for 2.5 years and was there for the whole trajectory of Crazy Rich Asians and simultaneously trying to figure out my own directing career. Can I do this? And he's an amazing mentor where he really just brought me into every single meeting. And that is kind of rare for assistants in Hollywood. Like I would get to go to pitches. I would get to, I had exposure to all these things that I'm now doing in my own career. But yeah, it was a shift. And then once I actually, I got into the AFI directing workshop for women and I wrote my own script for that. And everyone's like, you need to keep writing, and so they've kind of come back and forth. And I like the option to either be the sole, be a writer or a writing partner. I co-write with my husband now on projects and, or, have a writer do something and then I come in and direct something. So I like both, but it was kind of a long journey to get to wanting to direct. And obviously now you see way more representation with a ton of disabled directors that I've met through Respectability and, also female directors is great to see that representation and make you feel like you belong there. So that's kind of been the windy path.
Definitely. And I'm glad it's important that we all feel we belong in this industry because it's easy to be made to feel othered. And so that is our goal, to be creating this community for everyone to really feel welcomed. And Juliet, I think that really ties nicely into a program that you started last year on the Unstoppable films. In my mind, it's a blueprint program for all festivals going forward. So tell us how you started this program and what are your goals for it for the future?
I kind of was looking for my own space and realized that I had to create it. The first time I went to my first festival, I was so excited. I flew to New York. I planned everything down to the T, as most people with disabilities have to do when they're traveling. And I still ended up in the hospital. Like there were long lines. There was no seating. Sometimes, a lot of stairs and things like that. And it really affected me. And I was overexerted. And I ended up, missing my flight. And everyone around me, my family was like, oh my God, this is awful. We don't want you to do it again. And I was already buying the next pass to a festival because I still saw all of the the wonderfulness and the networking and meeting people that think and have the same passions as me. And I just kept thinking, how can I make this easier for myself? And once I took the last trip to Park City, I realized I'm looking at this like kind of wrong. It was something I wanted to do, but I was like, I'm looking at how I want to do this wrong, because it's not just me. It's like we're all having this really difficult time trying to get access. And I think that in order to change the way the media is portraying disability, I really needed to do this. It needs to come from a grassroots level, because even at film schools and at film festivals, to bring that awareness to these filmmakers that are independent right now, that are going to the industry, so they already have this new mindset and mind frame when they get to the industry. And so that is pretty much the proposal that I brought to Slam Dance, and they loved it. And my plan is to go forward. We've already spoken with Cannes Film Festival for the future. Another festival in Italy has reached out to us. So lots of people have really, been very open and excited about the work. And so I'm really so glad that everyone's interested.
Juliet, we'll stick with you for a moment. You're not in a typical hub. You're not in like the DC New York corridor. You're not in LA. Yet you're making a really big difference. So there might be people that are watching this who are, not in LA but are very interested. So how is it working in this industry in Florida? And what advice do you have for people who may never make their way to a entertainment media hub but want to play a role in this industry?
It is a little bit difficult sometimes, because Florida, for one, does not have any film incentive. It's very difficult to get anything in the industry coming here to really film anything. Luckily, we have Atlanta, but again, it's a lot with the travel for me. However, you have to start from like meeting the people around you. There's still a lot of filmmakers in your local areas. And I think that one thing that 2020 did bring about was that we are not that separated or far apart. I mean, look at us right now on this platform, speaking from all these different places and still bringing together an entire conference. So this is what can happen. I mean, I have a producer friend that works in LA, and during 2020, when everything was quarantined, she was shut down. She works as a producer for The Voice. They weren't working. It's like, this is the time. I've been waiting for a time to work on my own projects, and I wanted to get this writer's room. She got together for her writers. She invited me, and we had a writer's room, and we finished the series that she's been wanting to pitch. That may not have ever had happened or been a thing that she thought about had we not thought, well, we have to try somehow. And I think it just came out of this desperation, but this really great idea came out of that desperation that we can continue to use going forward. So I feel like it's even easier now to reach out to not just people in your local area, but people in LA and people in New York and Atlanta, and connect with them.
Definitely. One thing that I hope, and I think that all of us hope coming out of the pandemic, is that, this work from different locations, work from home, will not be considered a special accommodation, but just something that can be available for almost everyone, depending on the job that they have. And speaking as someone who used to travel often between the East Coast and West Coast pre-pandemic for work, I was able to actually get a lot more done by having all these meetings on Zoom and not be flying back and forth all the time and such. So hopefully that is something that remains for the entire disability community, that will make all of us be able to do our jobs better. Ashley, you've said that you realized that disability representation was so important while working on Crazy Rich Asians. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, so, I dealt with a lot of internalized ableism, so I didn't want to talk about me having a disability, even though it's something that everyone sees when they meet me. I would kind of wanted to push it away. And with Crazy Rich Asians, that was a film that exposed a lot of people to different roles for the Asian community, and they aren't, these characters weren't the usual sexualized Asian female or the nerdy Asian man. And people were sending John letters at the time saying, I've never seen myself represented on screen. And that was my light bulb moment of going, wait a second, I never see, myself or people with different bodies on screen ever. It's usually played by able-bodied people. And that kind of small idea really just transformed my whole career. I took that and I ran with it, and it really changed my whole thinking about how I grew up and how feeling those insecurities, feeling othered, feeling like I didn't belong was all probably due to the lack of representation. I was terrified to go to college, to get my first boyfriend, to be married. Would any of these things happen for someone who looks like me with a different body? And that was really, it comes down to, there were no stories that explored any of this type of stuff. And now with, even just like Instagram, TikTok, all these places that I'm getting to constantly see disabled people on my feeds, it normalizes it. And I know it can have the same impact on our culture if we see it in our TV and film and that type of stuff. So that project was really kind of the start for me of realizing, wow, I have this thing I want to do. And you can change how culture reacts and how Hollywood reacts to it. With Crazy Rich Asians, the success of that, all those actors went and had some type of spinoff or in some other big film, or, it really does show that the projects, people are interested, and when it has success, it's able to then kind of redefine what it means in the landscape of Hollywood. So that can happen with disability, I'm sure of it, and it's already happening. Just the projects alone that you always talk about, Lauren, the influx of them is showing that these are here to stay, hopefully.
Most definitely. And it also helps with representation, because when there's just a single representation of one type of disability, we know that that can't represent everyone. And so obviously a film like Crazy Rich Asians showed so many different types of folks. And so going over to Emily, Best Summer Ever, that was a feature film. More than 50% of both cast and crew were disabled. And so a single disabled actor was not representing the entire community. So you could kind of have a representation of all different types of disabilities. Why don't you share a little bit about your experience working on this film?
Yes. So Best Summer Ever was the second written in the movie with all the most disabled people since 1932 in a movie called Freaks. And this is like the first time right now that we get like all disabilities, like most disabilities, Shannon is in a wheelchair, I have cerebral palsy, Jacob, who's a football player, has autism, and there's so many other people in the feature on the background that has Down syndrome or they're deaf or so forth. And this is like, if you see yourself in a movie, this is the thing you have to see, because we do not talk about disability at all. You just kill, disable our beautiful bodies and our neurological differences are you. And it's totally normal. And for me, as a disabled lead in the movie, it was actually the first time ever I was treated normally. Like, I'm not the disabled actress. You have to have to have this better spotlight moment because I'm disabled. No, I'm just treated equally. On the day of my callback, I quit a play that was very, very, very ableist to me. And it treated me really poorly. So how great is it to quit that but get a major movie? And everybody was eating normally. Everybody was so kind. Everybody had their needs met. Like, they were crew members are like, we know you're disabled. If you need anything, just let me know. And plus, our crew members are disabled. Andrew Pinkerton, our producer and writer, has a policy like me. There are crew members that have like these same disabilities and so forth. And one of these crew members, actually, Marissa, actually is now a production assistant at Disney Plus. That's amazing. And those movies really prove, like as you see at other movies ending, that disabled people are possible. We are here, and we are very capable in doing anything you want us to do.
And Marissa, who's a young woman with Down syndrome, she was a participant in the 2019 cohort of the Respectability Lab for entertainment professionals with disabilities. And I remember being at a studio, and I won't name which one, where she got up and she started talking about her experience being a production assistant for an independent film, but a pretty major independent film with some pretty big names. And I was watching some of the executives' faces and their look of surprise. And I think in their mind was like, yeah, of course we can have like some disabled people join. And, it depends what type of disability. But in some of the executives' mind, especially when we were ramping up these meetings in 2019, in their mind, the idea that someone with Down syndrome or another intellectual or developmental disability could be on crew, they didn't get that idea. And Marissa, I feel like is one individual who's truly breaking barriers, because she is disproving all of these folks who have major doubts. And what's great about what Marissa wants to do is, like, she wants to be the best production assistant you're ever going to have. Many people treat the PA role as a stepping stone of like, all right, how quickly can I climb the ladder? What Marissa's doing and has already done is really perfected many specific jobs, holding the boom mic, for example, and such, and then is going to do that for the next 20 or 30 years. And so you're going to have an amazing production assistant who's not looking to just be like, all right, how quickly can I move to the next step, but how well can I do this job right here, right now for you? And so I know you've had many people on this here have had the opportunity to meet Marissa already.
She's the best. I love her so much. Yeah, her favorite job was the boom mic. Like every day, there she was in the boom mic.
And so, as you said, it's really not just about people we see on screen. While that's really, really important that we see ourselves reflected on screen, in my mind, and the reason that I focus so much on behind the camera is because if we don't have writers and directors and other crew members that have disabilities, and also even just on studio lots, the people who hand you your coffee, or in HR, or in because when you're on a lot, it becomes the community of people you see every day. And so when we see disabled folks just in everyday life, we're much more likely to write a character who has a disability, much more likely to cast an actor who has a disability, all of these things. And so by kind of focusing on writing and production, that really will help lead, in my mind, to employment of disabled folks in every sector. Because when we can get, a disabled doctor, teacher, lawyer, disabled love stories, just showing us doing everything that we want to do in life. So I kind of want to open it up to any of the three of you. Why is this so important to you?
I would say it really is important, and to speak about Ashley's film Single. With the first year of Unstoppable, I had to be in search and curate the films because no one really knew how to even go about finding them. And what I was saying that I wanted to see as far as the type of films that I was looking for to represent Unstoppable, like Single was it. I was so excited to like reach out to Ashley. I don't know if she remembers how I was like, I can't wait to meet you. Your film is amazing, and will you do this? You know, and so and to, even she was like, wow, yeah, I thought I missed the mark for the slam dance. I'd love to. So I feel like we wanted to get into these spaces, and we just needed to like find each other. And so it's just really important to see ourselves on television. As you were saying about your daughter, I see that with my niece all the time. Like she really just sees me as who I am. She doesn't see my oxygen. She doesn't see that I'm sick. I think if she visits me in the hospital when we were able to go, if I was there, it was like, oh, this is like a part of Juliet's house, you know, like she just really just accepts me. And I see that the work that I'm doing, that when she's watching like something on PBS and she sees a disabled character, she's like, oh, she's not like excited that she's seen something different, but something that she recognizes from her own everyday life. That she's like, oh, I'm seeing that, you know. So it really does matter, and we're raising not just our children, but the entire community. Once we normalize it, so many stigmas will go to the wayside. I realize that like this idea that accessibility is for everyone, it kind of goes with everything else. I feel like even accepting and just acknowledging disabilities, like a lot of the all the otherness will probably just fall away as well, because the intersectionality of disability is just so ingrained in everything else that once you can accept that, then why aren't you accepting everything else? You know?
I agree. I agree with everything that Juliet's saying. I very much remember when she reached out, because I was like, wait a second, they're doing a lineup of just disabled, like centered films. And I was like, this is amazing. No festival is doing this, you know? And it was really cool to see everyone else's projects in that and all the different perspectives. And I think that's the biggest thing that we're always trying to push back against, is that disability is not a monolith. And so to understand that you need all these different stories, you know, and Single, the short that Juliet is talking about, is the character is kind of unlikable. She's sassy, she's bold, she's intense. And, you know, I've done showings at places where, you know, a young woman who's like in her, I think like late teens or early 20s was a little upset. She's like, I don't like disabled people being represented this way. And I go, that's good. You shouldn't, because you shouldn't only have this one piece that is the thing that everyone has to look at. We should have tons of different stories about different types of disabled people, really nice ones, really mean ones, really, you know, so many different types of stories. And, you know, that was the big thing with Respectability. When I was in that lab, you know, the very first 2019, we went to a big studio and there's a ton of us sitting around a table, and every person there has some different type of disability. And the range and spectrum is massive, you know, of types of people. And it was this really cool moment of, you know, me even realizing like disability is so complex and there are so many stories here that, you know, there's no reason we shouldn't be represented enough, you know. And I agree with all the stuff about children seeing projects. You know, I wrote on an animated kids show, which is a little out of my element of what I usually work in, but I so much believe in representation for kids, because you see that with kids. As a physically disabled person, the fear or the, you know, a parent shaming them and yanking them away, saying don't stare. At 3 years old, when that happens to you, you feel very unsure about disabled people. You feel like you're in trouble around them. You feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that probably came from our parents, and probably my own included. You know, even when you have a disability, doesn't mean you have a perfect parent, or even I'm perfect. You know, I probably would have done it to someone. It's unlearning all these things and then realizing how they inform each other. And it's so important. If you can show a character who's friendly and isn't scary and is just a person in these shows, then it really changes how kids react to it. You know, it's similar. I hear a lot of stories from the limb different community about Lucky Finn and Nemo, and how that really changed the landscape for them, because, you know, a kid will come up to them at a playground, and if they have one arm, the kid will be like, "What's wrong with you?" And they're like, "Hey, well, you know, the show Nemo," or the movie Nemo, I'm like him. And then they go, okay. And they run away. It's like, that's it. That's all you needed was that really small moment, you know, and that's the power that it has. So
it is funny because I have the actual lucky feeling with life.
mm-hmm.
Cerebral palsy. And honestly, what you said reminds me of a couple of years ago when an actress in a wheelchair on Broadway was in the glass of Monterey, and her entrance was walking up the stairs, crawling up the stairs without her wheelchair. And there's a New York Times report of how everybody was uncomfortable with seeing her like that. The thing is abuse, but it's like, no, that's how we work. And stories like her and the teenager girl that you met, are why we need representation, because people like to think we're some weak people. We're sad. We're stuck in the house. We never get help or anything. But in reality, we're just like you. And growing up, I have never seen anyone like me. My little princess was and is Aurora because she had the blonde hair, the blue eyes, was skin like me. But she didn't have cerebral palsy. And I barely saw any cartoon characters like me growing up. Like I saw Rachel and I saw someone who was blind on Arthur, but that's it, nothing the first. And it's just so great that I'm seeing a lot more like like disability in these shows. But I really do hope we ever get a cerebral palsy because I don't see cerebral palsy. The actor in me is dying, you guys. And again, representation matters. The reason ever is magnificent because we have cerebral palsy, we have wheelchair, we have autism, we have this, we have that, and the movie is just so important. Your work is important, Ashley, and your work is important, Juliet. Like every representation is important, and we need the writers to write it well. So thank you, Norman, for looking at us out for the artists writing in and doing opportunities because we need people on TV and behind the scenes.
And so I mentioned before, that Ashley was one of the first people to help us with some of the consulting work, and that has really, really jumped. And we have, sorry, that I mentioned that Emily was one of the first to help us with the consulting work, but Ashley has since come in and helped us with some other projects in the past year. And we're seeing a turning point. I'm cautiously optimistic, in the sense that already in 2021, my team and I have consulted on 160 TV episodes or films across pretty much every major studio and production company. And that's in comparison to 70 back in 2020 and about a dozen in 2019. So the amount of requests that keep coming our way means that people are wanting to make a difference. And I see a notice in how people take our advice. There was a show that Ashley and I were consulting on, and we were really nervous about it. And when we got the most recent, we were like, wow, they really took our advice. There were some issues in there that would have been very problematic, and they fixed it, and which is really nice. And I've observed a lot of the people not just be like, okay, we're just going to get those disabled people to look at it and we can check off a box and say we're done. And a lot of that happened in 2018 and 2019. So much so that I don't even include them on the list of our consulting work. But pretty much every single project that we've worked on the past year, people are in it because they want to do it correctly. And they'll send us the script, or all the way the outline, for example, and then the first version of the script, and the second and the third, to really make sure that that they are incorporating our edits appropriately. And then they'll send the animatic if it's an animation, or the rough cut of live action. And it's really nice to be able to see the entire process of a project, and then all the way through marketing and promotion. There was another project that our board member, Delbert Wetter, had consulted on that included deaf characters. And the show was amazing, but then they were about to go for marketing, and just someone in the art department picked a still of animated characters using sign language. And while this word did not exist in the show, where they paused it was someone signing a curse word. And so it just happened. Yeah. So I always like to include that when I'm doing any trainings, as why it's so important to include your consultants all the way through marketing and promotion. Luckily, we were doing a virtual event with them, so they had sent us the photo before it went to deadline. And so we were able to say, stop, please don't use that photo, and here's why. And they have certainly learned their lesson with and so because it came to us first, we were able to really save them a lot of embarrassment. Although who knows, that could have been some publicity for the show, but it was a kids show, so probably err on the caution of not sharing that way. I wanted to give anyone in the audience the opportunity. I am monitoring if any questions come through. So if anyone wanted to throw a question in there, please feel free to do so. We do have one question about modeling as being an industry in which more people with disabilities are being included and able to show their beautiful bodies and faces. Is change in this industry helping to connect with the changes in Hollywood? Any of you want to touch upon that?
I think absolutely. I mean, I think ads, I've always said this, the ads we are shoving in people's face. It's hard to get people to watch your show or your movie, but advertisements, like, we don't get consent when it pops up on our Instagram or Facebook, and seeing different bodies there absolutely starts to get people to open their mind of seeing these characters in their stories, and studios going, oh, I've seen that before, or feeling familiar and not so foreign or scary or risky. I think they absolutely inform one another, and I think it's a great place for people who do want to kind of try and dip their toe in being in the spotlight. I was just recently talking about how people with disabilities sometimes, and this is mostly my situation and some other women I've talked to, did more hide themselves growing up. They would wear long sleeves, or they would wear pants, or not want to be in a camera in the certain light, or, there are these elements that really was scary to be spotlighted. And now they're on this other side of being a model and being in front of the camera, more, and that may transition even into acting. I think it's a good stepping stone to start to feel your way into being, on the other side. So I think they both definitely cross over.
And what I noticed is these are mostly kids. There are a lot more children models, which is fantastic. Like, my management is commercial management, and like every other day there's like casting monsters for child models. And my favorite example is there was a little girl at the Disney store last year in a wheelchair who was the model for the Princess Anna costume. And as an actress who dreams about watching the first Disney princess someday, that made me cry, because I so needed that in my life, and I really needed that as a child. Because as a kid, they were like, no, Disney models whatsoever. So to see that little girl, that princess to us, see Disney like hire disabled girl to be a face of beauty and perfection. It's just amazing.
I'm actually excited to see fashion design really get into and being inclusive. I've seen some things, but not on the, like fashion, like New York Fashion Week side. But I think that hopefully it's going to that next step. We now have the different bodies and different disabilities that are being shown on the runway. But now I want to see that you are really thinking about us and saying, here's fashion for you, something that fits. Or although I have an invisible disability, one of the things about my disability is I was really, really like super, super thin when I was young. Like I was always very underweight. And I was actually looking at an old picture of myself recently, and I'm like, I am never in anything, like that fit me. Like I just always looked. I could be at a birthday party and I don't look like the other kids. Like, why was I wearing that? And I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, I just never dressed like that. And now I'm looking at things. I'm like, I wish I could fit in that now. It's not that I wasn't. I don't know if I wasn't brave enough but no one else. Like I got called, a lot of names for being as thin and things like that. And so I guess it was something that was affecting me, and I wasn't really realizing it at the time. But yeah, I really think, and just to see so many different disabilities now that I'm doing this work, I'm like, okay, so when's the fashion gonna get in there? I think that would be great, especially like for children, um, to know that you don't have to conform to it, that you could actually go into a store and something is there for you. Like I love to shop, my family loves to shop, so I know with that, how much that would mean to, people that love fashion.
Yeah, there are a few adaptive clothing lines out there, mainly children, but haven't gone everywhere. And probably it's a lot easier if you're in like a major city to get access to that, especially if you need to try the clothing on first to see if it actually works for your body or not.
Yeah.
There's an amazing community called Open Style Lab, and Christine Mallon, she actually created it with a friend, and they bring in a bunch of disabled people and do workshops and have them help design like tools and clothing and different things that could be useful. It's a really cool organization, and I've chatted with her, and it's interesting what they're on the forefront of doing. She said, and there are brands that will partner and give them money to do stuff, but she said sometimes it feels like charity instead of an actual business, and that is hard when you're trying to build something. So, but it's a really cool resource to look into.
So the disability market is worth internationally $1 trillion. And that's something that I often talk about in terms of the entertainment work. And then when the disability market does include like parents of a disabled child or a spouse or such. So, but if you're looking at just those of us with disabilities ourselves, it's still a $1 billion market. And so I think once people realize that they can make money off of creating products for disabled individuals, it will change. With clothing, people will buy it. People, I mean, as you mentioned, that if you don't have clothing that fits for your body, you're going to be wearing something that's too big, too small. Just it's not going to look right. When you find a clothing line that fits you well, you're going to spend the money to do it if you're able to. So oftentimes we do have to go to that money argument to get past the pity framework, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I would love to ask you all, what advice would you give to people looking to get into a career similar to yours?
Do it. Just do it, because it's happening for everyone. Like I remember being in Hulu as the director and a writer with AFI, movie gone to Southwest Southwest at the same time as the summer ever. And Juliet had the Green Terry that's on PBS. That was on PBS. Things are happening. Like get education, educated and training what you want to do. Come to Lauren and connect and work. Be very, very passionate, and do not give up.
I agree. I agree. Get in there and really try to meet other people. Create writers groups and um, directors groups. There's tons of these things on Facebook, on Instagram, and just really, yeah, just do it. Like Emily has it right. Really, I know it does sound hard, and get into programs like Respectability, Black Magic Collective. There's like so many of them out there that def- definitely when it comes to um, the disabled community, I'm seeing so much more. I'm not sure if it's because this is where my gaze is now, because I feel like, where did you guys come from, right? But I'm just really glad that you all are here, and and it's just really important that you don't feel discouraged, because there's a huge community out here to support you. And come find us on Facebook and all these other platforms.
Yeah,
Just
I
to,
think, yeah, I agree with that. I think doing it is huge. I also think be ready to put in the work. It's a very hard industry. It's an art. I mean, people spend years perfecting crafts. Like, you can't just get in it tomorrow. You got to study, you got to go to the workshops, go to school, go do all the things to be ready, so someone does look at you and say, okay, they're ready. They have the talent. They've been working really hard to make this happen. Because it's a long road. But if someone once told me, like, if you keep going, as everyone's saying, eventually you will hit, if you're putting in the work. You have to put in the work. At the end of the day, filmmaking is a business. It is a craft, it's an art. And so you have to be ready to do that element. But if you keep going, keep pushing and trying everything you can to break through, you eventually will. It's been 10 years for me since that first like internship, and it's finally kind of starting to pay off. But it's been a lot of like really, really digging in for that long, and hopefully it doesn't take other people that long. But I was trying to figure out which direction I was going to go, and that always helps too. Like, try some different types of jobs. Just because you think you want to write or direct or produce or even act, try it. And if you don't like it, that's okay too. Move on to something else. I've done that with every job I've had. I'm like, don't like that, gonna go to this thing, and eventually the thing that works hits. So yeah.
and I do want to say one more thing, like, give back, like, go out there and support other filmmakers on independent sets, and like, participate in like forums like this, and be able to help and facilitate, or whatever people may need you to do, to be like, just like a helper or whatever. I feel like me giving back and being really able to help other filmmakers opened up a door for me that I wasn't even trying to do. Once I focused on helping other people, then all of a sudden doors were open for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
We all mentioned the Respectability Lab. So for anyone who wants to learn more about that, you can find it on the Respectability's website. Applications will open up this winter for next summer. And hearing it first here, that our hope is really to go back to an in-person lab like we did in 2019. But because we found that it was so important to keep a virtual component of it for folks who can't be in LA, we're looking at actually doing 2 labs next year, one in person in LA and one virtual, so more people can participate. Also wanted to share that if anyone is watching this and is interested in an early career opportunity, Respectability, along with 3 other nonprofits, has partnered up with Warner Media for a Warner Media Access Early Career Bootcamp program. That's also available on Respectability's website. Applications just opened on Tuesday, and they're open for another week and a half. And that's for folks that are really just starting out in the industry, looking for an office type job, wanting to be a development executive or something like that. So I'm always glad to answer more questions, and wanted to make sure people know of those opportunities. I saw one other question come in the chat, and I'm just going to do a very quick answer myself. Biggest misconception producers have when casting someone with a disability, and I'm going to spread that out to also just hiring crew or anyone with a disability. The biggest misconception is the fear that someone can't do the job. And I run into this all the time because, as many folks joke, that I'm, in addition to my day job, I'm an unpaid manager for folks who don't have representation. And so I spent a lot of time having conversations with folks, including just right before this panel, about how it's okay to be a little apprehensive and unsure, but that's why we're here, to kind of hold your hand, to kind of make sure that we can really help folks, employers, when they hire disabled folks, whether in front of the camera or behind the camera, and they can have us to go to for questions. I feel like we could have made this panel 2 hours long, but I know we're coming up to the end. I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to plug yourself. Is there any work that you have coming out in the future? How can people follow you? Anything you'd like to share quickly?
Unstoppable. We're open again for Slam Dance 2022. So go to Film Freeway and search for Slam Dance, and you'll see Unstoppable. Right now, we're also working on a separate website so that we can now build on all of the festivals that will be working with us in the festival of your choice. You just click and you'll be able to submit your films there. But yes, Slam Dance is open. This is our first year actually taking it through Film Freeway, so I'm really excited. We already started watching films, and we've already got so many. So we're still early deadline, and it's free. So that's the important part.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, Emily Kranking. Like I said, I'm doing my first short film in Baltimore called Verb, like Phineas and Verb. So I don't know when that's gonna come out, but it'll be next year. And yeah, so I'm just finishing my conservatory, just listening for stuff. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
And I'm probably most active on Instagram at Ash Eakin, Eakin, and a lot of things in the works. Nothing really announced yet, except I am shooting something the very beginning of September for Paul Feig's Powder Keg program. It's for female directors. They choose about five women to direct a short, and mine is about two disabled roommates in college, and it's fun, and there's a party, and yeah, it's going to be a fun time.
Can't wait to watch it. Excellent. All right, and you can follow Respectability on all the major social media channels. We also have an entertainment newsletter that goes out on Thursdays or Fridays, depending on how busy I am that week. And so you can sign up for that or send a note over to myself. You can reach me at Lauren A. at respectability.org, Lauren A. at respectability.org. And then if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see a combination of work things, kid things, and how I'm navigating my life with a new disability and such. So Donna, am I passing it back off to you to close us out?
You are. Thank you so much, Lauren, Juliet, Emily, and Ashley. What an amazing panel. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us today, your passion, your great advice. I think that there are probably a lot of people out there that have listened very carefully to you and are, in the words of Nike, not that I'm plugging Nike, but you all said it, just do it. If this is your passion, let's just do it. But thank you all for really showing us how Hollywood, how the industry is moving towards change. We are seeing so much change and the future looks really bright. Thank you all again for joining us today, and to all of our attendees that have been with us throughout the past 4 days. Thank you for coming to NACDD's 2021 annual conference. I hope that you enjoyed it. I know it's not always ideal when we are virtual. I hope most of it worked well for you. We appreciate your being with us. We hope that you have learned, that you have grown, that you have thought about new ideas, new passions, and new ways that you personally will move towards change. So I thank you all for attending and wish you all a great rest of your day. Thank you, everybody.